Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of the Godzilla Wins Saturday Picks Show on this lovely Saturday morning, May 20th, 2023. I'm your host, Jack Fredericks, editor of GodzillaWins.com, alongside my father, the Godzilla of Truth, John Fredericks, and the degenerate we all know and love, Nate Perry. We're with our esteemed panel of perfect sports predictors from the Godzilla Wins universe. Our fight guy and senior South Florida lifestyles editor, Patrick Assalone, is with us. UFC senior contributor to Godzilla Wins, Trent Connor, America's Sherriff, David Clarke, and senior baseball and NHL contributor, Dan Angell, will be joining us later in the show. We have a terrific show for you kind folks today. For the first 30 minutes, we're talking UFC Fight Night in Vegas. Then we're going to talk a little bit about John Morant, the Yankees cheating scandal. Is it a scandal? Maybe it's not. The NHL and NBA playoffs, and we'll close out with some Preakness handicapping for the 2023 Preakness Stakes. This is the Godzilla Wins Saturday Pick Show, and it starts right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Good morning.
All right, yeah, it looks like you guys are bringing the energy. Dad, in order to get these guys to wake up, can we talk about Beard Vet coffee?
Well, if you had some Beard Vet coffee like me, you'd be fired up. I got it right here. Go to beardvet.com, one of our founding sponsors here on Godzilla Wins. Sean, George, Kenny Lee, these guys, veterans, they know how to make coffee. Look, they did a bunch of deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan. They give part of the profits back to veteran organization, but you know, they couldn't get a good cup of Joe in the Middle East, right? In these battlefields. So they got back, they said, I'm going to make some really good coffee. That's beardvet.com. Price real. I love the dark roast. I tell you what, though, I started to do, I do the Keurigs, but now I'm doing the beans. I'm grinding them up, right? Because I got another coffee pot here, because that way I don't have to keep doing these Keurigs, because I got the beans going. Just go to beardvet.com, beardvet.com. Get your coffee there. If you want to save 10%, you can put in promo code Godzilla. If you don't, that's fine. Also, the main thing is you get your coffee at beardvet.com. You're going to thank me later. This is the best coffee you're going to have, reasonably priced. Go to beardvet.com, beardvet.com.
All right, and we want to thank BeardVet, as always, for making this show possible. So, Patrick, Trent, and Nate, we got about 30 minutes here to talk about UFC Fight Night 73, which Angela Hill and Mackenzie Dern are going to headline. We'll talk about that in a minute. They were supposed to fight in, I think, a co-main event last week in Charlotte, but it's been pushed off to this week, so we can talk a little bit about what you guys see there. But first, as always, one of my favorite segments in the show, I want to talk about the undercard fight you're most excited about. I always think that you guys have such an interesting perspective here. Patrick, we'll start with you as always. What's that undercard fight you're looking for?
Herrera versus Johnson. It seems that we've got a theme going here in this fight night of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu fighters who are not really bad strikers, but they think they're great strikers versus great strikers who can sprawl and brawl. And I'll get into that in a minute. Herrera has been off for a couple of years. He lost his last 3 fights before he sort of took a sabbatical. And I used the same philosophy that I was using before with the Kron Gracie fight a few weeks ago. What did you learn in that time off? Did you really look at yourself and see where the holes in your game were? Or did you just triple down on what you were doing, thinking that you're going to squeeze some juice out of that rock? That's the big question to me. If Herrera disappeared and did nothing but striking for the last couple of years, this could be a real barn burner. His ground game is really good, but if he's going to try to strike against Johnson, I think that's a huge mistake. Not to mention, I think Johnson is a much better wrestler. And when you get into these sort of exchanges where you have guys who are really good on the ground and had some success standing up, they sort of allow it to get to their head that they're now really premier strikers. And when they do run into a buzzsaw, they generally get their heads knocked off. So the way I'm looking at this is, if he really improves his stand-up and he's using his stand-up to set up his takedowns, it might be a different story. Otherwise, I'm going to go with Johnson, sprawling and brawling. I don't have a pick of whether it's going to be a knockout. I'm just going for Johnson with the win.
Nate, for the Johnson Herrera fight, do you have the odds for us?
I am pulling them up now. If you just want to give me 1 second.
Yeah, as Nate pulls them up. So Patrick, just to be clear for everybody, you're going with Johnson for that fight.
I'm going with Johnson for that.
Johnson plus 130, little underdog action.
Little underdog action. Love to see it. Okay, so Patrick starting us off right with the underdog there in the undercard.
There we go.
Trent, what's an undercard fight you're looking at this fight night?
I think one of the most entertaining fights on the card is Andre Fialho and Joaquin Buckley, and I think it's going to be one the fans are going to enjoy because these two love to bang. Fialho, I think they're both coming off back-to-back losses, but Buckley is moving down a division from middleweight to welterweight, where he actually used to fight, but he had trouble making weight. But he ended up making weight this time, and I think he is going to get the knockout over Fialho, who has lost by knockout his last two fights, and he looks for the knockout, but he doesn't have good head movement or defensive striking, which is a problem against Buckley, who's one of the most explosive guys in the UFC, and he's got really good kicks, really good striking, and I don't see this fight going to the ground at all. I think it's going to be stand and bang type fight, and Buckley's going to come out on top. As far as the odds,
Trent, go ahead, Trent.
I think Buckley by first round KO is a good bet at plus 240, I think. Yeah,
Right.
plus 240.
So Buckley first round KO. I love that. That's why we love to get Trent on here. He's always going to give you something interesting as far as the odds go. Nate, what's one of the undercard fights you like?
Undercard fight I'm pretty excited about is Chase Hooper and Nick Fiore. I've just been staring at this fight and sort of reading about the guys. And, Chase Hooper is so young. He's only 23, but he has 6 UFC fights already, and he's been 3-3. He's beat the people he's supposed to, and he's lost to people that are more experienced than him. But the thing for him is that he's 6'1", but he's been fighting at featherweight his whole career. And this is his first step up in weight class to lightweight, which seems like probably a better weight given his sort of size and frame. So I'm sort of interested to see if he can sort of reverse the narrative, which has been that he just loses to experienced fighters and beats guys that he should. Because Nick Fiore is a guy that is definitely an experienced fighter, potentially a guy that's, definitely a guy that's more experienced. So I sort of want to see what Hooper looks like with, an extra 10 pounds or so of muscle on him to see if he can sort of sneak out a win as a small underdog at plus 110. So that's sort of the fight that I'm looking forward to, just to see how that extra weight sort of affects him and see if it's beneficial.
And we've talked a lot in this show about how the extra weight, putting it on, taking it off, can affect a fighter. So that's definitely one thing to look out for really in any of these fights, is especially the undercard stuff. A lot of these guys, like I keep thinking about what Patrick said last week in regards to the undercard stuff a lot, which was just because you're in the UFC doesn't mean you're a great fighter. And I've been thinking about that because at times you look at some of these guys who are going up and down in weight class. If they're a world-class fighter, they'll be able to handle it. But if they're still learning, or they aren't a world-class fighter, stuff like that where you see those weight shifts, it can really affect them. I'm sure Patrick can speak to that. We've talked about that on the show before.
Jack, also it's the wrestlers who generally don't have issues with cutting weight, because I wrestled since I was 6 years old. I cut weight since I was 11. So to us, it's no big deal. It's just part of our life. When you get guys who are really not used to cutting drastic amounts of weight, like let's say for boxing, there's so many weight classes in boxing. You lose a couple of pounds, you're in a different weight class. It's not that big of a deal. Now you've got to perform at that level for an extended period of time. And if you're not used to doing this or make these pre-cuts and actually train to cut, it's catastrophic many more times than not.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, a lot of the wrestlers are going to be much more comfortable moving up and down a weight class than some of the guys who don't have that background. Okay, so let's move on to Anthony Fluffy Hernandez versus Edmund Golden Boy Shabazian. This is an interesting fight here. It's going to take place right before the Dern versus Hill fight. Hernandez, 29 years old. He's on a little bit of a winning streak here. 2 submissions and 1 decision win in over his last 3 fights, I believe. 4-2 in the UFC overall. That's just the UFC. Golden Boy lost a little bit of his shine with like a 3-fight losing streak a little bit earlier in his career, 2020 to 2021. And since then, he's kind of bounced back, and especially his most recent bout where he was able to record a win via knockout, 5-3 in the UFC. I'm going to start with Trent here, then we'll circle to Patrick and Nate. Trent, what do you like in the Hernandez-Shabazian fight?
I think Fluffy's going to have the grappling advantage, which has been that's one of Shabazian's weaknesses that's been exploited a few times. As far as the odds, I think Hernandez might be a little too much of a favorite. So, but I still think he gets it done by submission. But because Shabazian has to fight almost a perfect fight, and that's hard to do against Hernandez because he loves to make it a dog fight. He pushes the pace. He's always on you. He's always looking for takedowns, trying to get to the mat. And I think Shabazian's going to break under that pressure. Hernandez
Patrick,
is plus
do you agree?
175 by submission, so that's probably a good play.
I agree with Trent to a certain degree about, I think absolutely Hernandez is going to push things, but Shabazian pushes also. So it's not like you're going to get 2 guys that are going to run from each other. The question is, can Hernandez hurt Shabazian enough standing up to set up his takedowns and put him on his back, where Shabazian is completely agree with Trent, is much weaker off of his back. Shabazian on top, though, is freaking furious. His ground and pound is brutal. His striking is brutal. So, and the way you got to look at this is like this. If Shabazian has got in his head, okay, I know I'm not going to beat this guy off my back, and I'm not going there, he's got a lot less to concern himself with than Hernandez, because Hernandez has got to go through the barrage of blows that this kid is going to throw at his head. And one thing that I can tell you, and this is, again, the theme that I was speaking about earlier, when you have ground guys who are very, very good grapplers and have had some success striking, they sort of kind of start to think that their striking is better than it really is. And if he thinks his striking is better than it is, where he's just going to pepper Shabazian and then take him down, he's sorely mistaken. If he sticks to a game plan of staying away from the strike, setting up an angle for a takedown, I think his chances for success go up much, much more. If you're going to try to sit there and strike it out with Shabazian, I think that's a really bad move.
Patrick, let's talk a little bit more about that. What's it like, just expand a little bit more on this idea that some fighters think their striking is more effective than it actually is.
Well, you get guys who are really nasty with takedowns. So what is your opponent naturally defending against? Takedowns, all right? Well, they're not necessarily too afraid of your strikes. They're just really defending that takedown that they know is coming. Well, they'll get taken by surprise. They'll get clipped by something. They'll get rocked, fall down, and the striker just jumps on top and starts pounding him. It's like, whoa, my stand-up is brutal. I'm going to start doing this now. And they start to abandon the takedown game that got them in there. And that's generally what happens. I don't think Shabazian is going to have that problem. I can tell you, and this is something that you had asked me about before. My first 16 pro fights, I beat everybody on the ground. 17th pro fight, I got knocked the freak out off this planet. And what was the worst thing that happened? I woke up, said, oh, that's all there is. So for the next 2 years, all I did was stand up, nothing else. And I got to the point to where now the ground game bores me so much when you got a striking component involved. I'd rather just stand up and bang, because we're not going to the ground unless I feel like going to the ground. And we're standing up as long as I decide to stand up. And when you get that confidence in your striking game, the entire world opens up for you. And now everybody's terrified of anywhere that you can go. They're just not worried about your takedowns or your striking or something of that nature.
Okay, let me clear this up here if I'm understanding you correctly. So you're saying when you were a fighter, the first time you got knocked out, when you woke up, you thought that wasn't that bad. I'm just going to fight all the time now in that way because I'm no longer scared of getting knocked out.
Well, that was one thing, but I realized that my striking game was bad. I never thought I were a striker to begin with. I was a wrestler, and I could ground people down and beat the crap out. But now I had got knocked out, and I said, "Well, my biggest fear was not that bad. So what happens if I decide to embrace this fear?" And I fell in love with striking after that.
Interesting. That's why we love having Patrick on the show, because he gives us something that Nate, Trent, and I just can't really talk about, which is that fighter's mentality. And Patrick, as we know, you're
it's
fighter.
not everybody, Jack. It's not everybody that has that mentality. But this is what I mean when I say, what did they learn? What did they learn from that lesson they were dealt when they got just their freaking clocks cleaned? Oh, am I going to learn how to get out of the way and hit back? Or am I just going to do the same dumb thing I've just done and it just won't happen again?
Absolutely. So, Nate, from a betting perspective, much like Trent, what do you see in the Shabazz Hernandez fight?
I think I'm kind of inclined to agree with Trent on a lot of it. I've been trying to figure out ways that I like that I can get Fluffy Hernandez as a sort of at plus money, because minus 190 is just like so much juice to lay in a fight that at the end of the day has a lot of outcomes where Shabazian just clips him and then that's the end of it, right? Like Shabazian has like real knockout power in a way that, Hernandez hasn't faced in a while. So there's a part of me that's just sort of staring here at like, different winning method stuff. I like the submission thing. That looks like the probably clearest path for Hernandez to victory. I also think this fight probably lasts for a little while. So I've sort of been staring at, do I just take it, over 1.5? It seems like these guys will take a little while to sort of figure themselves out, but that's minus 155. So I don't love that. If you just take Hernandez to win in round 2 or 3, those are pretty big plus money odds. So I sort of like that. You can get a +5, +800 depending on the round. If you think Hernandez sort of takes a round to feel him out or sort of grind Shabazian down. So that's probably the angle that I'm most inclined to take. But yeah, I think we're all pretty much in agreement that we like Hernandez here. It just depends on how you want to do it.
Okay, so we all love Hernandez, just trying to find a way to get those odds down from a little chalk. Although, I don't know, minus 155, I'm not like super disinterested in. I'm less interested in a minus 355 when it comes to UFC, but I can kind of swallow a minus 155. Johnny Chalk, my dad, knows all about taking a 155 favorite. Yeah, he's not afraid of a little minus money. No problem. He'll take it all day. Okay, so
Jack, I'm gonna take Shabazian just because everybody else is going against him, and he's got a striker's chance, and all you need is one shot. So I'm gonna go with Shabazian.
I love it.
Yeah, he's definitely the value play.
Yeah, and that's why you gotta love those strikers. I mean, one clean hit, and you're like, oh, great, I made a ton of money. So a lot different than the grapplers where you're like, well, he's got to get to the ground. He's got to grind him out, and they got to get back up, and they got to go back down, and they got to get back up. Then the round's over. They got to do it again. Then they got to wrestle. It's like sometimes the strikers, they see one opportunity, bang, fight's over. I won $400. So it can happen. It can always happen. Okay, so let's go to Dern versus Hill. Trent, set us up here with this fight, which is a pretty major fight. One that was supposed to be the co-main event last week ends up being on the card this week.
So this is another stylistic matchup of grappler versus striker. Mackenzie Dern is probably one of the best jiu-jitsu practitioners in women's MMA, and Angela Hill's she's a veteran. She's got like 30 fights on her professional record. So she knows what to expect. I think everyone knows what to expect when Dern gets in there. She wants to take you down. She wants to look for a submission. So Hill has to be disciplined in how she fights. She can't throw looping kicks or spinning back back fists that are going to get her taken down. She has to throw kicks up the middle, knees up the middle, and land shots from the outside. And as far as Dern goes, she's gonna be looking for the takedown. She's very tough. She's never been knocked out, so she'll definitely eat a shot to try and get in there, which I think she will get it to the ground at some point. But I think Angell Hill will be able to defend it, because in her last few fights, she's looked a lot better in her defensive grappling. So I think it's a very tough fight for me to pick. I've been back and forth all week. But if I had to pick a side, I think I'd go Angell Hill based on the odds.
Okay, so Trent likes Angell Hill there. Patrick, I got a question for you, but I want you to talk about the fight first, then we'll get there.
Trent makes some great points, as he always does. Dern, you sort of know what she's going to do. What has she learned? She's lost 2 out of 3 out of her last 3. Or excuse me, that was Hill. Excuse me. What has she learned? But Dern, here we go again. Are you going to try to strike, or are you going to go to what brought you there? Now, the real X factor here for me in Dern is she's had a lot of turbulence in her life. She got divorced. She changed gyms. I've never been divorced. I can only imagine, through everybody I've ever known, it is not the most fun experience. And I have never, ever heard anyone say, boy, I just cannot wait to get married again so I can go through that whole divorce thing one more time. It was so much fun. Never heard that ever once in my life. Okay. So that's, how does she use whatever feelings are being generated from that? Do you make it into a positive, or are you still stuck in a negative hole? Okay. Changing gyms. A lot of people think that changing gyms is the worst idea ever. Well, you know something? The gym that she was at up to this point sort of struck her in a mold. Now everybody knows what she's going to do. Changing a gym is one of those things. Again, what did you learn? Well, maybe the gym that you're at is not really addressing the needs that you have. Let's see if they have. If she can strike and not do anything dumb, literally meaning throwing some wild stuff or getting desperate for a takedown, she's probably going to grind this out. Hill, on the other hand, is a lot more athletic, is a much better striker, and she's got better cardio, but she's only got one thing to really keep in mind. If I get taken down, what do I do? Now, the vast majority of people, what they do is they start going into the jiu-jitsu hole off their back and trying to fight off their back and learning all these techniques that they're never, ever going to master in a couple of months. Stand up. The easiest thing to do is just get up. However you have to get up, get it back on your feet, start banging again. So we will see what she has learned, and hopefully she's just going to keep it really, really simple. With that being said, and because of the X factor and the gym change, I don't know how that's affected her. I'm going to go with Angell Hill too.
Okay, so two for Hill there. Patrick, before we get to Nate, I want to ask you this question. It's something that I'm always thinking about when I watch these fights, because what I hear a lot, and it's going to speak to what you're talking about, what I hear a lot in these fights is X fighter got better at grappling. This fighter wasn't that good at grappling, wasn't that good on the mat, and she or he has worked very hard to get better in that way. What I'm interested in is, what I don't hear a lot of is, this fighter got better at striking. So what I'm kind of interested in is that a possibility? I mean, can you improve your striking to the point where it makes a difference in the ring or in the cage? And if so, like, how do fighters go about, is it just boxing? I mean, we're just talking like just boxing training. How does a fighter go about improving their striking?
Well, the reason why you don't hear why, oh, this person got better striking is because striking freaking hurts, man. And a lot of people don't want to do it because you're now taking yourself out of your position of comfort, being a wizard on the ground, into doing something that you really stink at. Well, what do? You take yourself out of where you are and put yourself in the most hostile environment you can find, meaning the nastiest striking gym that you can find, and accept the fact that you're nobody. Now you've got to have guys that really want to help you. So, for example, a lot of people will think, okay, I'm going to get in and I'm going to start hitting. No, the first thing you got to do is you got to learn footwork and head movement. Then we're going to put you in a corner and we're going to start banging on you while you cover up, defend yourself, and get out of a corner. You're not throwing blows for weeks, maybe months, until you can actually get out of the way and not get hurt. That will make you look like a phenomenal striker, because then people are throwing at a target that is not there. To Trent's point earlier, when he was saying so-and-so just sits in front of you and doesn't move, it's really easy to destroy a target that refuses to move. The problem is you've got to also marry it to your style. You're not going to become Floyd Mayweather overnight when you've been wrestling your whole life. You've got to find what works for you, and you need a coach who doesn't like you, doesn't care what you think, is only doing what's best for you. And then you got to listen, which good luck with that in the fight world, brother.
So, Nate, is this Angell Hill's fight to lose?
I think so too. I think I'm in agreement with the guys. I like Angell Hill as well. And the reason that I sort of like it is I just think that Hill probably just outpoints her. I was staring at this thinking, all right, plus 135 is cool. What would be better? And I don't hate Angell Hill by decision at plus 180 either, because it seems like she'll probably just outpoint Dern, because Dern's going to spend so much time trying to take her to the ground and trying to use that sort of jujitsu that she's known for. It seems like Hill can just sort of land some shots. She's already a good striker. We know that. She throws a lot more strikes than Dern does, which is to be expected, given the sort of matchup. So my sort of inclination is that, if Dern can't get her down and Hill's takedown defense is pretty good, then this is going to be a problem. And Patrick could probably speak to this too, because one of the things that I was sort of reading when I was researching this stuff is a lot of people saying, Dern's known for this jiu-jitsu skill set, right? We sort of talked about that a little bit, but what she's not good at is wrestling. And I think that there's the difference is jiu-jitsu is cool, but if somebody doesn't want to roll around on the ground with you, how do you get them there? And you need a little bit of that wrestling to be able to do that. And it doesn't seem like that's the best part of Dern's game. So she sort of needs a willing partner to be able to use that jiu-jitsu in some ways. So I sort of like Hill, if she can just sort of, get out of most of these takedown attempts, she should be able to sort of score with the striking.
Jack, to Nate's point, and these arts are often confused with one another. Jiu-jitsu is not wrestling. Okay? It is simply not. And wrestling is not jiu-jitsu, for that matter. And as I was telling you before, you're not taking me down unless I feel like going down. Well, if I feel like taking you down, you're going to the ground, because I've done both of these for my entire life, and I've really spent a lot of time at doing it, transitioning from one to the other. But if you're just going to charge in at somebody and think you're going to take them down, and sooner or later it's going to work, you're going to eat an awful lot of punches from a hill. Trust me, that's what's going to happen. And then every time your skull gets rocked, you have to reset and try to shoot again. So it's a process to do this. And Nate freaking hit the nail on the head. You've got to have wrestling to really make that jiu-jitsu work in an MMA fight.
I think another thing to look at in this fight is it was on the undercard of last week's fight card as a 3-round fight. Now it's bumped up to a main event in a 5-round fight, which I think benefits Angell Hill due to her cardio and the fact that if she gets taken down and held down for 1 round, it's not the end of the world, because she still has 4 more rounds to outpoint Dern.
Yeah, that's really solid.
Yeah, we that's a really good point, that this fight is now 5 rounds, and the strategy changes so much when you go from a 3-round fight to a 5-round fight, especially when you're talking about someone who's trying to get you on the ground. One of the reasons I love the UFC, and I love talking about this with y'all, is that I think outside of maybe golf, is one of the sports that it's so easy to see an athlete's progression over and over again as they learn the sport and learn how to get better. So it's a lot of fun talking about how these fighters end up in a position where they can get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, or get better at grappling, or improve their striking. it's just it's a sport that is always, you're always evolving. I mean, I've been watching LeBron James for 20 years, and like, yeah, he's a better basketball player than he was 20 years ago, but not like that much. I mean, he's always been amazing. So it's a lot of fun to watch these athletes in the MMA world just improve like this and be able to talk about that. Yeah, Patrick.
Hey, Jack, can I share a quick story? I got to leave also, but
go ahead. Yeah.
Several years ago, and I'm not going to use any names. I'm in the guy's book. You can read it for yourself. We had a friend of mine had a guy who was going to fight for the UFC championship or a tournament. Guy got injured. They flew him in on a couple of days' notice. So we're in Atlanta training. And this is a heavyweight tournament. The first time we roll, I'm catching him in everything. Arm locks, leg locks, chokes, left, right, up, down, everything. The next day we roll again, didn't get a thing on him. Zero. And I'm not talking about I wasn't trying. He picked it up like a sponge. He changed his body positioning incrementally in every position I was setting him up in. And I couldn't get anything at all. My advice to him in the fight was, you're going to fight 2 strikers to win this tournament. Just take them down. Don't get hit. Hit them on the ground. Don't stop hitting until the referee stops you. A couple of days later, what does he do? Takes him down, keeps hitting him until the referee stops him. You follow direction and you keep the holes in your game as far away from your opponent as you possibly can. You will win fights. When you start getting creative in the middle of something and throw the game plan out the window, it's probably not going to end up. So to Jack's point, people can improve so quickly, but they don't have to be a black belt overnight. They've only got to be able to not make that mistake that's going to get them finished.
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's such an interesting, and thank you for sharing the story, Patrick. That's awesome. It's such an interesting sport because it's so fluid and it's so tactile in the way that these guys adjust their game plan and learn. It's a lot of fun to watch. We want to thank Patrick and Trent for joining us for our UFC coverage here. We always do 30 minutes of UFC beforehand. One of my favorite parts of the show is the UFC. Thank you, Patrick and Trent. I know Patrick has to go.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all for joining us. We are going to transition out to some other topics. Before we do that, though, Dad, one of the things we got to talk about is Birch Gold and how to shore up your financial security.
Well, listen, if you're sitting there, a lot of younger people listening right now, they're not really thinking about retiring. I'm 65 and I got to be thinking about that with my family. I got to take care of my family. You want to be sure you're not caught in a buzzsaw like our family was in 2008, where we lost everything. And a great hedge against all this going on in the economy, bank failures and everything else, is precious metals. Right now, get this, central banks around the world are buying up gold at a record pace. Why? Because they're scared the dollar may collapse, problems with the petrodollar. No one knows. The best thing to do is to diversify some of your 401k pension plan or IRA into precious metals, gold and silver. And the best company to do that with is Birch Gold. All you got to do, this will take you 1 minute on your phone. Just text Godzilla, that's me, Godzilla, to 989898. They're going to send you a free 20-page info guide. Look it over, read it over, see if it's right for you. If you decide, okay, I'm going to put some of my IRA in gold or some of it in silver, which I would recommend, 401k as well, and pension plan. It's a seamless process, very effective. The service is great, costs you nothing. And then you simply have further diversification. But look, I'm not a financial analyst. You guys make your own decision on what to do, but get the information. Information is power today. So just text Godzilla to 989898 and you're good to go.
And we want to thank Birch Gold for making this show possible. Thanks for everything they do. Okay, Dad, I know very quickly, maybe just keep it 2 or 3 minutes. You want to reminisce on your youngest son's baseball career and the fact that he is leaving your nest.
Well, you know, guys, I'm 65. I've been taking care of at least one child in my household for 33 years in a row. So that's over half my life. And of course, started with Jack, and then his sister Claire, and then his brother Joe. So I'm going to get up on June 26th after he takes off for West Virginia, and there's nobody there to take care of. Of course, he was going out. He was going for the weekend. He's got a couple weeks off. He's going to Virginia with his friends, and I'm like, well, asking the stupid father questions, like, well, are you going to have enough to eat? You know what? Where are you staying? And he's like, Dad, I'm 19. I'm 19. I'm staying with Gavin, who's 20. I mean, what? All right, so I get it. But look, Joe's going to pitch at West Virginia. He's got a scholarship there, a good scholarship. They're number 6 in the nation. And so it's going to be fun. And so we'll, he's worked, as his brother Jack knows, Joe has worked tremendously hard. He's up. When I got up today to come to work, he got up early to go work out. And we're going to see what happens, but it's going to be a new chapter in his life and ours. And I know a lot of people follow him. And, but look, he's going to the Big 12, and he's going to a 6th ranked team in the nation as one of their high leverage relievers. So it's going to be a fun ride, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be fun, but I'm going to be empty nester. Me and Ann, me and Mom, empty nesters. It's all good.
Yeah, we're so sad for you. One of the things I will say, with Joseph, I think a lot of people know I teach high school. That's my job. And so I'm around kids all the time, and the amount of just grit and determination that Joseph, my youngest brother, has demonstrated to achieve this goal of becoming a Division I athlete, a reliever, a baseball player is pretty unbelievable. You have to be wired a certain way to do it. I've coached a lot of sports before, and I can tell you a lot of kids don't have it, but every once in a while you come across a kid who does, and it's pretty marvelous to watch happen because they do it on their own. They don't need any help. They don't need a lot of direction. They just have a goal and they work towards it in the fiercest possible way. So we want to commend him on his incredible achievement, something that I could never have achieved. Okay, so we're going to move on now, talk a little bit about some things that have been in the news lately. First thing I really want to talk about here is John Morant. Once again, John Morant is in the news for some, basically he flashed a gun on Instagram Live again. That's the whole story. He did that during the season. They suspended him for a couple games, told him not to do it again, and he did. So now he's dealing with the fallout of that. He's not playoffs anymore. Grizzlies had an early exit. Gee, I wonder why. So Nate, I'm going to start with you, then we'll go to Sheriff Clarke. Give us your overall feeling of just the John Morant situation here.
My overall feeling is that, this is like a big problem. And I think that the gun stuff, the stuff that gets all the attention on Instagram Live, dancing in the car, flashing a gun, whatever, same thing, nightclub, flashing the gun. Those almost just seem to be like symptoms of like a bigger problem that Ja is having in a lot of ways. Like, this isn't like there are other, there's the shopping mall incident where he gets in a fight with a security guard. There's the pickup basketball game where he, pulls a gun on a kid that he says was threatening him. There's so many other things that are going on with Ja that it's like him just having a gun and like waving it almost feels like the least of my concerns sometimes for him. But at the same time, it's like, it's the thing that the NBA can like most definitively look at and be like, all right, this is a problem because it's on Instagram Live. So this is like what they're clinging to because all the other things are so sort of shrouded in like sort of, he said, she said, or, maybe this happened, maybe it didn't. Everyone's sort of got a different perspective. And this is something they can just point to and be like, yeah, don't do that anymore. And it's the sort of easiest way to sort of, protect the brand of the NBA and just be like, we don't wave guns around. And it's, it's been a problem in sports. I mean, Plaxico Burress famously shot himself in a nightclub, doing similar things to Ja, spent 2 years in prison in New York because that's against the law. Gilbert Arenas never really recovered career-wise from his sort of gun incident. So, this isn't like anything new in the realm of professional sports, but like, it's a problem. It's a huge problem. And, you know, he doesn't need to be breaking the law to be suspended by the NBA, right? And this is going to hit Morant, you know, harder and harder in the pocketbook. It looks like as of yesterday, Nike's taking his shoes down off the website, so they could be terminating their deal. A 40-game suspension is obviously going to have massive financial repercussions for him. So, I mean, you know, if you can't, you know, he's not doing anything against the law, but it's certainly something that's dangerous, and it's certainly something that, you know, is worrisome given sort of all the other noise around various other altercations that he's had. You know, like, he's getting in fights with people all the time. If he's always armed, then it's just it feels like less a matter of if and more a matter of when something really bad happens.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that analysis a lot. So, Sheriff Clarke, I'm going to ask you a question, but you can kind of take this however you want. It's just something I'm interested in, especially from your perspective, because you're the only one on this call who's held public office. If you're Adam Silver, like, how do you handle this?
Let's put it this way. I wouldn't handle it like he did the first time. It's psychology 101. You know, you reward good behavior, you'll get more of it. When you punish bad behavior, you'll get less of it. And what he did the first time, Silver, wasn't going to get through to this kid. Look, I'm not going to try to psychoanalyze John Morant, because you can't fix stupid. He knows what's at stake. He just doesn't give a damn. And he knows in the long run, you know, that old biblical saying, this too shall pass. That's kind of how he approaches life. You know, it's just a bump in the road, you know, and then people always want to talk, get him some help. This is a grown man, for heaven's sakes. Like I said, I don't know what's going on in his head other than just being stupid. But if Silver, and Silver's not trying to protect the brand, he knows he's got a hell of a talent within the league here. And although, you know, you don't want to like bury the guy, I'm not for that, but this guy didn't learn the first time. And I don't think adding a few more games, we're getting into, what should it be? 25 games, 40 games, half a season. You know, we're getting into a number, and that's not going to fix John Morant. I think you take away something that's important to him, and that's the game of basketball. But you have to do it for a significant period of time, not games, you know, 25 games. If we look at it that way, I think we're overshooting this thing. Let's take away something that's important to him, and do it for a significant period of time. Look, anybody who has kids has had to do this sort of thing. Anybody who's in a position of authority and leadership, you have to do this sort of thing. And if you don't do it, you know, constructively, but if you don't get their attention by taking away something that's important to them, they're really not listening. So, I mean, you know, he's not going to be in the food line tomorrow, the food pantry, and you know, they're talking in terms of how much money he's going to lose. It's not like he only has a couple dollars in his pocket now. He knows he'll recover from this, and he knows that at some point, and watch how many kids are running around, not just in Memphis, but all over the United States with his jersey on. You know, they look up to this clown, and they want to emulate this clown. And I'm not going to get into whether they should or shouldn't. But I'll tell you right now, as soon as he steps on the court again for a Grizzlies game, because first of all, I'm the Grizzlies, I pick up the phone, I start making phone calls and try to peddle him. That's what I would do. And I don't think that that's going overboard, because you just don't need the headache, for heaven's sakes. You got to think about the rest of the organization. You got to think about the fans. But I'll tell you what, when he steps on the court for the first time, whenever he comes back, he'll get a standing ovation.
So the Grizzlies angle is interesting. I'm a Grizzlies fan. I was born in Memphis. I live an hour and a half from there. I think they should move on, because I think that he just is demonstrating he doesn't care. Maybe he would care if he was in Denver. I don't know. But I don't really, as like a Grizzlies fan, even though he's a massive talent, I'm just not sure any of this is worth it, especially after some early exits in the playoffs. But overall, I'm less interested in his just ability to like reconcile this problem, then I would just move on from him. However, the problem is like as an asset, he's not valuable right now. I don't know if anyone would want to take on this liability. So Dan, I'll ask you this question. If you want to jump in, you can. Should the Grizzlies move on, I guess?
I mean, there's always going to be one team that thinks, you know what, we can fix him. Like, you're probably going to be looking at trading him to a lottery team that wants to build around him and build around the possibility that they have the personnel in place that can fix what's wrong with him, get a potential superstar for a discounted price. So I don't know. I mean, if Memphis can find the right deal, it makes perfect sense to explore what's out there, because I mean, the NBA is filled with dumb GMs and dumb owners who are willing to think it's not going to happen here. We're going to be the ones who get this right. And no, it doesn't work most of the time. But there's nothing to be lost by Memphis trying and seeing what's out there.
The hubris of some GMs and owners, really in every, but especially the NBA, of being like, we can get it under control, we can fix it, is pretty unparalleled. So I definitely understand where that would come. Sherriff, would you take him in Boston?
No, and they don't need a shooting guard. They got enough shooting. They need another big. But as to what you just said, these owners, and you can't blame them. Look, most of these owners are billionaires and whatnot. They didn't get to be billionaires by being stupid. They see these guys not as human beings, as a commodity. That's all these players are. And I'm not saying that pejoratively, but that's why, I can trade them and do this and that. They're a commodity. So you're going to find some wealthy owner who, he'll say, I think we can fix him, but that's a technical approach, fix. They're not going to change his ways. And there's a difference between adaptive change and a technical change, or a technical fix and an adaptive fix. A technical fix, you think you just, move a couple things around and it'll have an impact. Whereas an adaptive change, you put it on the individual, and that individual has to want to change their behavior, and it has to be more important to them than to us. See, it's not important to me whether John Morant changes his behavior. I don't know the guy. He's not making any money for me. That's his problem. That's how I look at it. But an adaptive change is a lot harder. Like I said, he'll play in the NBA again. I don't think he should be banned for life, but for heaven's sakes, if you see something as a commodity, it's not that, it doesn't mean that much to you. It's just how much money can we make off of him when you see things as a commodity. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm saying that's how owners got to be owners. That's how they got to be wealthy, by finding value in things.
But Sheriff, isn't that the whole problem now with corporatism in America? I mean, corporations in the U.S. in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the biggest corporations in the U.S. those CEOs understood that they had a moral responsibility to make a positive impact on the country. Then the Harvard pinheads came in and they came up with the shareholder value nonsense, started shipping our jobs to China. Now, I don't want to get into politics, but it's kind of the same thing, right? Doesn't matter. Whatever happens, you close down your manufacturing plant, you board up the windows, long as they can increase shareholder value. Well, it's the same thing here with these owners in basketball. I mean, look, I'm not going to comment on the Grizzlies. I'm not a Grizzlies fan, or not a fan, so I'm not going to comment on somebody else's team. But I'll say this. This guy needs to be suspended for the season. I mean, at some point, you got to take a stand and say, you know what? There's a bigger picture here, because like one of you guys said earlier, there's kids in Memphis that's got his jersey and his hat on, and they wear his shoes. And there's supposed to be some responsibility towards being a role model. And we simply can't keep changing the rules because these kids act stupid. I mean, look, I'm for second chances. The kid had a second chance. He did it again. He doesn't care. He could care less about anybody.
This
I
is
mean,
more a second chance, though. You know, as Jack indicated. I'm sorry, Nate, with all of the incidents that he's been involved in recently. But I think sending him away for a year, what it would do, it would put the onus and the responsibility on John Morant. Let's see how you act without the thing you love best for a year. Because you know what? He's going to screw up again while he's out there being suspended. And then I guess then the third time people will realize this is who the guy is.
right.
This is who he is.
Yeah, they'll never suspend him for a year. I mean, they just won't. It's too risky. I wouldn't be shocked if I would support that decision if they did suspend him for a year, but I don't think they will. I think probably 25 to 40 games. He's just, like you say, he's too much of an asset, and he's an asset to the NBA, and he drives TV ratings. He's fun to watch. He's such an important asset to the Memphis Grizzlies and to the NBA that it'll probably be, it'll be a suspension with more teeth, like we talked about, with the Huggins situation last week, but it's not going to be this situation where he's gone for a year. But I do think that in some regards, if he were suspended for a year, he may finally get the opportunity to work on some of these issues and see this as a huge problem, or not, or he may just keep doing what he's doing. And he may just be one of those guys who just doesn't seem to care for whatever reason. I do think he probably needs to get some sort of help, but we'll see what that holds in the future. Dad, when it comes to the future, one of the most important things you have to do is you have to be able to protect your financial future. And one of the ways you can do that is through targettrading.co. Can you tell us a little bit about targettrading.co?
Listen, I love you just heard Patrick Assalone. He's got this company. He trains people in futures trading. And the thing I love about him is kind of like me in baseball. He puts his record up every week, for the month, for the quarter. And that was trades that made money and trades that lost money. And he posted every single week through the year with a cumulative total. I mean, that's the way to do it. It's hard. It's not easy. There's no free lunch for anything, but I got about 100 students on my show, about 100, I think we're up to 110 now, that have joined the program. All of them have been successful with it. Some put more time in it than others, but that doesn't matter. But all of them have been successful. And you can check this out, because with everything going on, you might want to get a second income, but he's the best at it. There is. Mom's in it, Ann's in it. She has been successful with it. Just go to targettrading.co. That's targettrading.co. And you say John Fredericks or Godzilla, you're going to get 15% off on your tuition, and you can thank us later. They're also a founding sponsor of Godzilla Wins. So we thank Patrick Assalone for that. Targettrading.co.
We always want to thank Patrick. We love having him on the show. Okay, so Dad, I'm going to lead with you here. We're going to get everyone in this discussion. We're going to talk about the Aaron Judge cheating scandal. Nobody hates the Yankees more than my father. That's well documented. He despises them. Just for context, for anyone who hasn't been following along. So this week at an at-bat, the Blue Jays announcers noticed that Judge was glancing to the right before every pitch. And it didn't seem like he was they didn't really know what to think, but he kept doing it and they kept pointing it out. Then lo and behold, he glances to the right, gets a pitch he likes and hits it like 4,000 feet, home run. Then the Blue Jays announcers were pretty, they suggested maybe there was something nefarious going on. Now, afterwards, Judge addressed the issue. And if you watch the press conference, it sort of looks like he wasn't ready for the question, which I love. But he said, hey, we were up 6-0. And I was trying to quiet down my bench, who was, doing a lot of chirping and taunting the Blue Jays, out of the respect for the Toronto Blue Jays and the respect for the game of baseball. As the leader of the New York Yankees, I needed to calm down my rambunctious teammates. I'm going to tell you right now, as a teacher who has to often quiet down rambunctious groups of people who get riled up about a lot, glancing at them sideways has never worked in the history of life. So the idea that was what he was doing and that they could see it, I'm not even sure how they would see it. So all right, forget it. That explanation was ridiculous. Dad, are the Yankees cheating? Are they worse than the Astros?
Oh, man up, for heaven's sake, you bunch of snowflakes. This is baseball. Are you kidding me? Nobody hates the Yankees more than I do. They were at the root of this whole scandal from the beginning. Everybody knows it. When the report came out, it all got redacted, right? Because they have to protect Boston and New York. I get it, right? I'm an adult. We became the scapegoat because somebody banged on a garbage can. Give me a freaking break. Most of the games that we won in that series was on the road. So it's all a bunch of nonsense. But man up here, you bunch of snowflakes. Cheating in baseball. You're trained to steal signs. What are you kidding me? I mean, when I pitch, basically you got a guy on second base. If you're going to have the same signs, you're a freaking idiot. If you're too stupid to change your signs or go out there and do something different. So you got a guy on second base. They're flashing the signs back to the dugout, and then they're flashing them to Aaron Judge. Hey, that's part of the game, you bunch of fairies. Oh, you know what? The Blue Jays announcers were upset because they were getting their ass kicked 6-0. So Judge is cheating. You know what? You guys suck for even saying it. You're a bunch of pansies. But man up. Hey, guess what? Home plate is 17 inches. Okay. You play Little League, it's 17 inches. You play Babe Ruth, it's 17 inches. You play minor league baseball, college baseball, it's 17 inches. You go to the major leagues, it's 17 inches. This is what I tell my son every day that's going to West Virginia. That plate, which hangs in my office, is 17 freaking inches. It never changes. If you can't adapt to that plate, your problem. It's 17 freaking inches. Give me a break. What a bunch of whiners. You know what? If he stole the signs, guess what? Figure it out, Blue Jays. What a bunch of whiners.
Dan, cheating or baseball?
Well, first, I mean, the plate's 17 inches unless you've got Eric Gregg in the 97 NLCS working on behind it. So I just had to get that in. But the Blue Jays did do something about this. They sent Jackson down to Buffalo. Like, the Blue Jays know this isn't cheating. This is the announcers making something that it shouldn't have been. Like, they noticed something, okay, but Jackson admitted after the game that, yeah, I've got to tell, I need to work on this. And the Blue Jays sent him down I-90 to Buffalo. So they know that Judge didn't do anything illegal. The Yankees didn't do anything wrong here. So yeah, this is really a non-controversy. It's just a pitcher who's got to tell, needs to get it figured out. And that's why he's back in AAA now.
Yeah, but Peter, even if they stealing signs is part of the game. All of a sudden we're not going, oh, you can't steal signs. We have to have electrical things in your head. 2, curveball, 1, fastball, 3, forkball, 4, changeup. That you put your fingers down. If there's a guy on second base or they're getting in the dugout, every inning you go and has anybody ever pitched? You change the signs, right?
I agree with
you
that.
mix them up. You have codes 1, 1, 3 is now your forkball. I mean, how stupid is this? You know what? It's part of the game. This is part of the pansification of everything, right? That no male toxic masculinity, can't have that. We got, we got people, the whole beer can thing. Hey, man up and play baseball. It's a man's game. Okay. If you can't deal with it, get out.
Okay. You need to chill with the bed coffee, because like 10 minutes ago, you told everyone that like corporatism in the 50s ruined America. And now you're talking about the pansification of everything. Sheriff Clarke, you have something like a little bit more salient to add?
Remember when we asked him about to do a rant and he's like, oh, I'll just talk about like being an empty nester. And then suddenly he just flies off the handle on every other topic.
Yes, John, spoken like a guy who is a fan of a team that got caught cheating. You're going to rationalize because you are in a place where you can say anything about cheating after what the Astros were discovered to have done, which I don't think was the worst thing in the world either. And I think that should be part of the game. Look, all the Astros did was they introduced technology into stealing. That's all they did. And we're in the tech age. I don't think this is the crime of the century, but at the same time, when Judge came out and said what he said, why is he saying that if there's not something afoot? Just say, hey, that's part of the game. You know, everybody does it. But then I brought in, we had a little discussion online this week. What about the steroid era in baseball? That was cheating too. You know, cheating's part of the game, you just said, John. And everybody knew it was going on. And I'm not going to say everybody was taking steroids, but everybody knew it. The players knew it. Bud Selig knew it as the commissioner, and they just looked the other way. I don't think, performance enhancing drugs should be used, but if a person wants to use them to enhance, looking for an edge, right? And I like the NASCAR saying, you know, if you ain't cheating, you ain't racing. And so, okay, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but they were stealing signs, and okay, shame on the Blue Jays, I guess. But how come batters aren't? I don't know if they're not allowed to do this, but how come when a catcher is giving the hand signals, the batter can't look down to see what hand signals coming down and try to figure it out? I don't know if it's a rule, but it's an unwritten rule that the batter can't be peeking at the catcher putting the signs down. So, yeah, I guess it gave people something to talk about this week. If cheating's okay though, where do we draw the line? That's all I'm gonna say. If it's okay to do, well, then bring in the technology. Who was using that? Wasn't somebody using their cell phone?
There's a difference between trying to pick signs up, right? Trying to pick signs up on a baseball field without the technology than, you know, having a hidden camera in the outfield and banging garbage cans, right? That's different. That's just part of the game. So I'm not excusing what Houston did. I'm also saying that other teams did it. They didn't get the same treatment. They didn't lose draft picks and all that because we were a scapegoat, because nobody cares about us, right? So now we just band together and screw everybody. We're just going to keep winning, right? But as far as performance enhancing drugs, I mean, that's different. You got the Preakness today, right? You drug your horse. It get like Baffert did a couple years ago. It doesn't get out of the system in time. Guess what? You get banned. You get taken off the board. That's what happens. That's real. And so you can't really this has nothing to do with steroids. That's performance enhancing. You can't do that. I mean, those rules are clear. But that's like saying I'm on second base and I've been able to decipher the catcher's signs and I can't flash that to the dugout. This is part of the game. I mean, that's like saying, well,
yeah. So we're steroids. We're steroids.
No, steroids is performance enhancing.
Hold on.
That's a drug.
But it was part of the baseball era during that time. But the other thing too is once you go down that rabbit hole of differentiating levels of cheating, well, this cheating's okay, this is not. You went to a very dark place.
It's not cheated. That's like me getting, that's like I'm facing a batter and I got a 2-2 count on him, and he's sitting there thinking, I'm going to get a dead red. The guy throws 87. It's going in the seats. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to be able to spot this fastball. He's trying to get that. I'm going to throw him a changeup at, 76 or something. I mean, that's just part of the game.
These days, a changeup is 87.
Well, my changeup,
So,
my fastball was today's changeup.
Yeah, that's why you're sitting here complaining about feeling yeah. So just to kind of put a cherry on this, then we'll move on a bow on it. Yeah, so I don't care. Steroids, like whatever. You like horse racing is different because it endangers the life of the horse. So you can't be juicing your animal. But as far as people want to use PEDs, do whatever you want. I'm not a moralist. I don't care. As far as what the Astros did, yeah, it was cheating. It was egregious. I think Altuve probably did have a buzzer. That was a stupid explanation too. Like I wanted to like show my wife's tattoo. Like she'd never seen my tattoo. That's ridiculous. Like Nate and I both have tattoos. Dad has tattoos. Like the minute you get a tattoo, you show everyone your tattoo, including your wife. So like the idea that he was like hiding it, the better explanation would have been like, I can't expose it to direct sunlight or whatever, because you actually can't, do that. So like, that was a ridiculous response too. He probably had a buzzer. Like what the Astros did was egregious. They took it to the next step. They took something that was like sort of okay and they made it not okay, and then they won a World Series because of it. I'm an Astros fan. We got the second one without cheating, so let's move on. Okay, here's what I want us to do. First, Dad, I need you to tell us about Ignite 45. Then we'll move on to some NHL, I believe.
You own a small business.
MLB.
You own a small business, doesn't matter what it is. You're a plumber, you do HVAC, you're an electrician, right? You're a delivery, you got a delivery service. Any small business that you have, you got to get in the social media game today. You got to have a website. You got to be able to get that search engine up. And these are very expensive to do. A lot of people don't know how to do it. Best thing you can do is go to ignite45.com. That's our sponsor, Ignacio Falco. Here's what he's going to do, just like he did for Godzilla Wins. He's going to look at everything. He's going to give you an overview of where you are, website, social media presence, give you an overview, give you an assessment, all for free, and then give you a recommendation. No obligation, you take it or don't. And so he's helped a tremendous amount of small businesses. He's in this to help out small businesses. Go to ignite45.com, check out, do the assessment, see where you stand like we did. Go to ignite45.com, promo code Godzilla Wins. You're going to get $100 off your first order if you choose to go forward. But if nothing else, get the assessment done, see where you are. And it doesn't matter how big or small your company is, but he really specializes in single family-owned proprietorship. So he's really good at that. He'll spend the time. Go to ignite45.com, ignite45.com.
We want to always thank Ignacio for partnering with us as well. Thanks, Dad, for giving him the shout out there. So before we get to the MLB picks, I'm gonna really just we'll do like rapid fire, about 3 minutes, Dan, and then John. Dad, one of your readers commented on your article last night, and it has some issues with your transparency. They said you lost money on Tuesday, and then you didn't have any games on Wednesday and Thursday, and then you said you won money on Friday. So that's why you post your record. Just so you know, other people are watching, and
cheating.
Yeah, there we go. It's just part of baseball. It's part of baseball.
In the article last night, in the article last night, I didn't say I was off. I took 2 days off. I simply posted where I am for the season. I didn't bother to go over what happened 2 days ago, which I think I was 1-4. Last night, though, I was 1-2. I bet two major dogs, lost both games by 1 run. And I took Milwaukee plus 230. They got shut out 1-0 by McClanahan. And then I came back with Florida plus 180. And they got beat 4-3 by the Giants, bottom of the 9th inning. But I had the Astros. But look, we post every day. I'm sorry I took 2 days off. I got tied up in Atlanta. And but I'm going to be back every day starting now.
Okay, perfect. Dan, got some MLB picks for us in under 90 seconds?
Are we doing MLB or NHL right now?
MLB, then we'll go to NHL.
Okay, so MLB, my picks for today, Alek Manoah under 17.5 outs. I don't know how this line is so high. He's had control problems all season. I mean, if you like another prop play with him, over 2.5 walks also looks really good. He's had over 4 walks in 6 of his past 8 starts. Baltimore is 3rd in the majors and seeing a lot of pitches. So I don't think he's going to do very well today. Marlins Giants under 7.5. Garrett's much better than his ERA, and Webb's pitching well. The Marlins can't score to save their lives, so that's just not going to be a high scoring showing. I'll take the White Sox minus 0.5 in the first 5. Giolito's pitching well and just won against the Royals, but Chicago's bullpen is horrible. I don't want to mess with the White Sox after the first 5 innings. So this is one where you just want to get in and get out because nothing good happens with Chicago after the 6th inning. Pirates money line. Keller has been outstanding this season. He's showing why he was a top pick. 20 scoreless innings in his past 22, and one of those innings where he did give up a run, the runs were unearned. So the Pirates are getting great pitching from Keller. He just went the distance against Colorado 2 starts ago. He went 7 against Baltimore. So I think he's going to put up a really good showing again today. And then finally, I'll take the Astros over 5.5 for their team total today. I mean, it's the A's. Their pitching is horrendous. We all know it. They have the worst bullpen in the league. Their starters are even worse. This team has a 7.08 ERA. So the Astros should put up a huge number.
You could probably make a lot of money just taking the over for the A's like 5 days out of the week.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's pretty
Why
ridiculous.
why doesn't the commissioner move the entire A's organization down to AAA?
I mean, well, and not only
if only we had promotion and
Make
relegation.
a AAA organization. It'd be great down there.
Yeah.
what they're doing is criminal. If you've seen, I mean, they're moving, but if you've seen the stadium, it's like there's like 17 people at these home games. I mean, it's like another example of like Oakland sports just totally imploding, and it's frustrating because
it's because that fan base has been treated so terribly. I mean, you look at Oakland's second tier professional soccer team, they actually get some decent support for that level. I mean, the A's get no support because the owner has just had both feet in Las Vegas for several years now.
Yeah, and I mean, he doesn't care about the product on the field till he moves down there. Dad, seconds, can you do your picks? Then we'll get to the NHL, NBA, and the Preakness. Gonna go.
I like two games. I like 2 games early. That might change as I get more into it and write my column today. But and I'm again, I took 2 days off and I got a bunch of people wondering if I was dead. So obviously that's getting some traction. But
I think they're mostly just worried because you didn't adjust your record after Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, I did on Friday. I mean, I put up the losses. I lost $400 or something on Tuesday. So I went from 2,000 to 1,600 or whatever it was, and I adjusted the. I was 34 games up. Now I was 30 games up. Now I'm 29 games up because I lost 2 out of 3 last night. But having said that, I like 2 games today. You just can't bet Oakland. I mean, this team is so bad. I'm going to take the Astros. Giving up a run and a half money line. They're starting to hit now. That's going to be, I think, minus 125. I just saw on DraftKings minus a run and a half. I don't bet the innings thing. I don't even know what that means. Watch the game. As far as the other game I like today is San Diego minus 130. Musgrove has been absolutely pathetic this season, but his last time out, it looked like he was starting to get his feet back under him. And Boston's losing every day. Chris Sale, you never know what you get. It's like a box of chocolates, right? One day he's okay. The other day he's getting lit up. I really don't know where this guy is, but so I like San Diego with Musgrove today, minus 130. Those are my 2 early picks. I'll have a couple others today in my column. Go to GodzillaWins.com. That's GodzillaWins.com.
John Fredericks. Here's your posted up for the money on Tuesday plus 1605 for the season. Then you lost $400. Then you posted on Friday plus 1605 for the season. That's what we're talking about.
No, I was up. I was up. I was going into the day. I was up 19. Look, I follow it very closely. You're the editor of the things in Akron. Edit it, but I lost money on Tuesday. I didn't pick Tuesday or Wednesday, right? You know what?
Like
You guys are just jealous. You're all jealous because I win in baseball. Nobody else can win in baseball. I pick 5 or 6 games a day against the money line. I've been up the whole season. You guys can't match it. Vegas can't match it. So all the haters come out. I get it. Here's the better thing to do. Follow my picks, bet them on DraftKings, make money, and thank me later.
We're working very hard in the next couple months to get sort of and this was my dad's idea, so credit to him, to get kind of a picks tracker for the website so that we go kind of enter our picks, keep them to be a little bit more transparent. So we'll look out for that. And Dan, of course, is also a terrific baseball handicapper. You're not the only one who wins games, Dad. Dan, let's move to the NHL. We'll do a little bit of that. Then I want to talk to Sheriff Clarke about his beloved Celtics who are struggling here. What are some NHL picks you got for us? Stanley Cup really heating up here.
Yeah, so the thing I'm looking at is what is going to happen with this Panthers-Hurricanes series after that 4 overtime marathon, because a game like that just sticks with you and can easily carry over into the next game and beyond. So I think Carolina is probably going to be a strong bet in the first period for this game, because this first 20 minutes in game 2 is probably their season, because if they don't win this game, they're going down to South Florida down 0-2, and they've just played the equivalent of 3 games plus. So I'm not sure the Hurricanes can come back from something that demoralizing if they lose this game. And Florida's playing with house money, not only in this series, but in this game as well, because the Panthers came in thinking, let's get a split. Now they've guaranteed a split, and they just had to work 2 full games to get it. So if Carolina can bury Florida early in this first period, I think Florida's going to be thinking, you know what, we've already put in the work for 2 full games here. This one's just not our night. Let's just get this thing down to Miami and try and win games 3 and 4, get this thing to 3-1, and we'll call it good. So I think Carolina in the first period is a really strong play because the Hurricanes just have to dominate this first 20 minutes or it's pretty much over. Then the Dallas Vegas series, I thought the number was in a really good place after 40 minutes, and then William Karlsson did what he does and the total just fell apart there. So my bad on that one. But the thing I really like here with Vegas is they dominated the faceoff circle. The way that Dallas won its first 2 series was the Stars kept winning in the circle, setting themselves up early, getting good looks at the net. If Vegas is winning 57% of the faceoffs the way they did in game 1, that's not going to work. Dallas got good goaltending from Edinger this time, but he's been really inconsistent this whole playoffs. So if Vegas is getting the draw and they're getting good looks at the net, I really don't think Dallas is going to last too long in this series. So I think Vegas looks really good for game 2 with how they won that first game.
Very, very interesting. Dallas looks so good against Seattle. Now, we did talk about the Dallas-Seattle matchup, and we knew that Seattle was going to steal the game, but they looked good against Seattle. Now they come in against Vegas. I know Dan's been watching the.
Well, they looked good at times against Seattle, but they let the Kraken hang around way too long in that series. Like, that was not a series that should have gone 7 games.
Yeah, no, it should have gone 6, and went 7. So they have looked a little shaky. Dan's also been locked into Carolina, Florida. Go to GodzillaWins.com for all of your hockey coverage there. Dan's doing a great job with that. Sheriff Clarke, we got to get to the Preakness. We got a lot to say, the Roar horse racing family, but I can't leave out the Boston Celtics here. Like, what's going on? Dropping 2 home to Miami. Like, not only that, I received no F-bomb laden text messages last night. So have you given up?
I have the white flag in my hand. I'm not waving it yet. My only hope out of all of this, where they're at right now, down 0-2, losing 2 games at home, is that the Celtics, they get bored and they need a new challenge. So I think they want to be the first team in NBA history to come back from 0-3 and win the series. That's the only thing I can hang on right now at this point. No interest, lackadaisical. Once again, the guy who claimed to be one of the top 5 guys on the planet last week, Jason Tatum, comes up small. I keep my eyes fixated on him when they're on offense. And you just, when you do that, you see he's just walking around out there. He's not demanding the ball. He doesn't have the Mamba mentality. I don't care who he says his favorite or his role model or idol was coming up in basketball, being Kobe Bryant. He doesn't look for the ball. He doesn't demand it. He went to a stretch in the 4th quarter yesterday where they were in trouble, and he didn't even touch the ball in the offensive set. And this Missoula, I think he's in over his head. I think that was a mistake. I said this before. I said this when the playoffs started, that Missoula should have. The Celtics should not have fired Udoka. What he was involved in, we don't need to get into that, but you look at some of the other stuff that goes on in the NBA and people just get a suspension. They went and fired the guy, for heaven's sakes, right before training camp starts. So, this is where they're at. They go to Miami. They're under 500 at home in the playoffs. Under 500 at home. So maybe they go on the road where they're above 500, and now all they can hope to do is just get a split down in Miami just so they can stay alive.
Let's hope so. I mean, they looked like they're carrying so much momentum after that Sixers series big win, game 7. The Heat are suffocating. I mean, they're not an 8 seed, and they don't play like an 8 seed. We'll see what happens. It would be an implosion of the whole Eastern Conference if the Heat were to run through it. Then, of course, Denver on the other side looks unstoppable. A Nuggets Heat series would probably end in 5 games. So, we'll see. Now, we want to get to the Preakness Stakes because this is a huge race today. Second jewel in the Triple Crown. 2 weeks out from Churchill Downs. Kentucky Derby winner Mage is the 8-5 favorite. Kentucky Derby winner is usually the favorite here. Not a heavy favorite. 8-5 is still fairly good odds for the front runner. I've got a preview and picks that I'm working on. I'll have it up in about 15 minutes after the show. So go to GodzillaWins.com. You'll see it there. We're going to start with Nate. We'll go to my dad. I'll end it because I've got a lot of thoughts here. Nate, what do you like?
So I mean, my strategy for the Preakness is typically I fade. I don't really usually typically bet the Kentucky Derby winner. It's a really short turnaround. These are still young horses. And, Mage wasn't a guy that was on really any of our radar before he won the Kentucky Derby. And I'm not sure that's changed for me. I think these odds are sort of artificially low just because he won one good race, but I'm not really sure it's indicative of, being, a Triple Crown winner or anything like that. So I am looking to back the number 1 horse. I like National Treasure. I like it for a number of reasons. Mostly, I think you're just getting value on a good horse that seems to be improving. And in terms of the way that I expect the race to sort of flow, National Treasure should probably be sitting pretty close to the front. There's not really very much pace in this race. So Mage is going to have a hard time sort of making up ground like he did in the Derby, where he really just benefited from, the fastest half-mile pace ever run in the Derby when he sort of closed on the leaders there. So in terms of race flow, I don't think Mage is going to have as much pace to run at. So I don't like him to win. I like National Treasure to be sort of more forwardly placed and probably run towards the front and just be able to hang on in this race. That's sort of where my head's at right now.
Yeah, so Bob Baffert, best trainer in the world, cannot compete in the Kentucky Derby for the last 2 years because of some drugging scandals. I think he should be allowed back next year at Churchill Downs, but Maryland doesn't have as strict rules when it comes to that stuff. So he can race here in Maryland. He's not the favorite because Mage won the Kentucky Derby, but he's pretty close, especially after a late scratch yesterday of another horse who was kind of a heavy favorite. Dad, any stock in National Treasure? You like Mage? I mean, you really yesterday you talked a lot about how you like Mage's guts.
Listen, Mage is tough, and if you go by the chart, his speed rating is 105. That's unheard of. His buyer speed rating, his buyers, people that follow the sport, basically is like the premier speed rating analysis, and you never see a horse with a 105. I mean, it's off the charts coming off this big race. He's got a 2-week turnaround, but look, he's going to be, just based on that, that's why he's the favorite. He's going to be the one to beat. Baffert can't count him out with National Treasure. I don't like the 1 hole, but I think if he can get off decent, kind of get in the middle of the pack, that's where this horse runs. He can break out of there, maybe sneak up the rail. I like Red Route 1, but what I'm concerned about is the Preakness is 1 mile and 3/16, just a little bit shorter than the Derby. Now you get to the Belmont, it's 1.5 miles. The whole thing changes. But he's a closer, and so you really can't count him out, depending on what the fractions are. The horse I'm worried about is Perform One, and let me tell you why. Last time out, he won the Tezio at Laurel, so he's not been shipped around a lot. He's been in the area. He had a nightmare trip, absolutely nightmare trip, and he was able to win that. Now, the owners spent $150. The owners and the people that manage him, they spent $150,000 to get him in this race. He's only got lifetime earnings of $20,000. Why did they do that? Right? We don't know. Perform One to me is the wild card here. We don't know how good this colt is, and especially based on that last win. You really got to be, you just got to be very, very careful of that. And again, Red Route in, you throw his last one out. He got out of the big gate poorly. He's in there, but I'm going to go. I'm going to take a shot here with Perform One because I don't know how good this cold is. I'm probably going to get decent odds, so I'm going to go with 6 Perform One.
So that's an interesting choice. So Perform is a 15-1 long shot. His sire, he shares the same sire with Mage, Good Magic, which is also the same sire as Blazing Sevens, who I'm going to talk about in a minute. So Perform, you're right. Nobody really knows what he can do. His equine speed has increased dramatically every race. You love to see that. It's not at 105. I mean, you never see 105. You're right. You maybe see 101, 102. The qualifier that he won, he beat some others. He beat Coffee with Chris, who's going to be running this week as a 20-1, or today as a 20-1 long shot. Coffee with Chris is a horse that will be leading at the beginning and will most likely falter. He's not a pace setter, and he's gonna run out of energy. That's not a huge favorite there. 20-1's a long shot, but Perform is interesting. And at that Tessio race, Dad, I don't know if you watched it or Nate, but he was on the rail and he moved very adeptly at the very last minute down the stretch to the middle of the pack and then nosed out another horse who I forget his name. I believe
90% Maddie.
90% Maddie, that's right. So he knows that out. The biggest issue with Perform most likely is that he is a wild card and he has to get out of the gate. He's got to be able to run in the mud because it's always muddy at Pimlico. And he just may run out of dirt, especially without a horse at the front who's going to really set a pace. But I love that pick because it's really gutsy, 15-1. I like another closer here. I'm going with Blazing Sevens, the number 7 horse at 6-1. This is Chad Brown's horse. Chad Brown has won two Preaknesses. He usually employs a strategy where he keeps his horse out of Churchill Downs, out of the Kentucky Derby, and then runs him in the Preakness. It's worked for him in the past. Blazing Sevens, like I said, he shares the same sire as Good Magic, or as Mage and Perform, which is Good Magic. That's the sire. What I really like about Blazing Sevens is he has incredible equine speed for a closer. And he's improving again. I just don't like horses who sit at an equine speed of, even if it's 95, 92, whatever. I like to see horses who went from 70 to 80 to 92, because it means that at the right moment, they're moving in the right direction. You don't want to see him go back. You just want to keep seeing the equine speed go up. But he is a late closer. And the problem, like Nate pointed this out, one of the reasons National Treasure might be the smartest pick is it's really hard to close at a track like Pimlico, which is short and muddy. The way that they manipulate the track just doesn't open itself up to closers. And then you got guys like Mage who are just going to be running so much faster. But I really like Blazing Sevens. The biggest issue with him is that he finished 8th 2 races ago on January 28th, but he hadn't raced in 4 months. And Chad Brown just basically was like, listen, I mean, they don't act, they can't say this before the race because it's gambling, but he indicated that Blazing Sevens was just stretching his legs because he hadn't raced. And then he went and he won his qualifier and he blew everyone out of the water in that qualifier. That was a really, really nice race that he won. And it was a grade 1 race. The problem, Dad, with Red Route 1 is he hasn't won a grade 1 race. You got to be able to win a grade 1 race if you're going to beat a horse like Mage. So looks like Nate likes National Treasure. That's a good pick. A lot of people are going to be on that. He's going to get hammered down. Dad likes a really gutsy pick and Perform. I love that. I'm going with Blazing Sevens. You can go to GodzillaWins.com and you can find all of our picks and previews for all sports on the website. Dad, before we leave, we can't talk about horse racing without talking about Rosie's Gaming and Emporium. If you could tell us a little bit about that, then take us to War Room.
I tell you what, you got to go to Rosie's Gaming Emporium right now. You go there. They got 6 locations in Virginia. Here's a good thing. If you're a new player with Rosie's and you get a card, you're going to get between $25 and $1,000 in free play right off the bat. And don't forget, they've given away over $500,000 in jackpots. Got 6 locations in Virginia. Plus, don't forget, we're going to be at Colonial Downs. We're going to be live there starting on July 13th. That's part of the Rosie's operation. Now Colonial Downs owned by Churchill Downs. So racing is going to be Thursday, Friday, and Saturday post time, 1:30 p.m. Our entire radio and TV operation moves there from July 13th to September 9th. So we're looking forward to that. Just go to rosiesgaming.com, founding sponsor of Godzilla Wins, rosiesgaming.com. And if you want, look, if you want to bet the horses, you can sign up with Twin Spires there. And they've got some good deals going. I just want to ask this one question, guys, before we go, because I want your advice, like all of you. The Boston Celtics are plus 145 now to win the conference and beat the Heat, down 2-0, going to Miami. They're a better team. Should I take a shot with Boston at plus 145 to win the conference? I want everybody's assessment here. Let's go right down the line. Jack?
Yeah, always take plus money in every situation.
Nate?
No.
Angell?
Not enough value.
Clarke?
No.
You guys are not.
Good instincts, John.
You guys talk me out of it. Out.
Yeah, look, I haven't won an NBA bet in my entire life, so go with them.
Well, I was 0 for the season on the Colorado Rockies. I think I won last weekend. The team I can't win a betting on. Now I did win when they got swept by the Astros is the Cubs. I'm sure, Sherriff, whenever I pick the Cubs in my column, you have to groan because I'm like 0 for 15. Every time I bet them, they lose. So I'm just going to stay away from the Cubs. I can't figure this team out.
Good. That's what they need. That's what they need. You bring bad juju, man.
Terrible bad juju, right? But the final thing here, guys, before we go is Tampa Bay keeps winning. I mean, like I last night, Nate, I bet Milwaukee, right? This is a first place team. The Brewers are in first place. I got 230 to 100. How can a first place team be plus 230? If you bet Tampa Bay last night, you had to lay 270. That's like 3 to 1. I mean, what are they? The 27 Yankees? They did end up winning with McClanahan, but how do you not bet a first place team and get 2.5 to 1? Like what is going on with these odds? I was shocked by that, Nate. And then that's it. I'm done. Response?
No response. I mean, I don't know.
After 9 o'clock, I stopped this.
Yeah, I just
I honestly, Dan and Sheriff, I don't actually think we're on air anymore. So
I don't either.
Oh yeah, we're still on.
we're just
We got to go. We got to sign off. Okay, guys, thanks
Okay.
for being with us. Next up, you're in the war room.